But anyway, let's go north. Let's go to Queensland and chat to the great Matt Canavan. Matt, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rowan. Yourself?
Yeah, we're very well here. Good to see you. You've been a busy boy over the last couple of weeks. Tell us what you've been up to. You're no longer there on the front bench, so you've got a bit of spare time on your hands. Writing for The Spectator, which is fantastic. Great articles there. But tell us what's been going on.
Oh, well, Rowan, yes, I've made a few changes this year. The new pay packet hasn't arrived yet, so that will be the biggest change, so to speak. But look, it has. I made a call a few weeks ago that I thought we needed a bit more drive, a bit more push, and the Nationals party room thought differently. So I've returned to being a senator for Queensland, which some people say it's now I'm just a senator, and I think it's crazy. I'm extremely lucky to be in this position, and I've just thrown myself back into that role. And as you've mentioned, kept busy last couple of weeks. And one of the things I'm very focused on is making sure that we do not glibly sign up to these fantastical, ridiculous next generation targets like net zero emissions by 2050 and cripple our economy in doing so. I'd have no problem if we were like other countries who just go and say these sort of things and then just keep on their merry way. So apparently Japan signed up to net zero emissions by 2050, but they're building 22 coal-fired power stations right now. They're building them, right? Well, we tend not to do that in this country because our word is our bond, and I think it's important that we be upfront with the rest of the world about what we're doing. Happy to reduce carbon emissions, but let's do it in a realistic way.
Now, you're absolutely right there, Matt, because not only do we give our word on these things and then go off and do them, even just setting aspirational targets, we end up legislating it before anyone knows what's happening. I'm thinking, of course, of Turnbull ratifying the Paris Agreement and so on. So we rush into these things. We say, oh, it's aspirational, it's non-binding, but then suddenly we find it is binding. Just what would a world look like in 2050 if we had net zero emissions?
Yeah, well, look what happened in the last 20 years. Even before we ratified Kyoto in the 2000s, so about 15 years ago, there was pressure on state governments to clamp down on land clearing, to stop farmers from being able to develop their own land, and most of them did that partly in response to that pressure. And one of the reasons we're meeting our Kyoto targets is because we've stopped farmers from clearing their trees. Now that's had real-world impacts. Here where I am in central and north Queensland, people, farmers and landowners now have had property rights stripped off them, no compensation paid, and their opportunity to grow and develop their part of this great nation has been diminished. So we've got to be very careful about this because you're right. What starts out as an aspirational, don't worry about it, it will be okay. It quickly becomes an extra cost and burden on our farmers, manufacturers and miners. It quickly becomes a justification to rip off people's property rights, and it quickly becomes a way of making us all poorer.
Rita.
Now, each way Albo has been all over the shop when it comes to energy and climate policy, but now Labor have committed to this 2050 plan. How do you think that's going to work? Because it has been widely applauded by the Canberra Press Gallery, a lot of business groups are on board. So how are the coalition going to tackle that?
Well, Rita, as you say, they've announced, well, I'm not sure if they've announced a plan. I think that's perhaps being a little too generous to Anthony Albanese. They've announced an idea, a target. Just look at the last few months with Anthony Albanese. Just before Christmas, he came up here to central Queensland. He came up and said how no, he supports the coal industry and it was all a mistake and Matt Canavan was telling lies and everything. All right, and that was his view. And then 3 months later now, he's got behind a policy which would have to see us end coal exports in a generation. So people working young people in the coal mining industry up here in central Queensland today won't have a job in their working lifetimes thanks to the policy announced by Anthony Albanese. Now, what's changed? I think what's changed is Anthony saw, there's a few fires around, so I'm going to change my whole policy about how this country is run based on what is a very tragic event, but ridiculous, right, to justify a change like that in that regard. That's what he's done. And what's been revealed is he hasn't got a plan to get there. But we know they've got a secret plan, the Labor Party, because yesterday it was announced or revealed that Mark Butler, the minister, the shadow minister for climate change, has been secretly developing a plan to establish a thermal coal national interest test board it's an Orwellian name. It's its job in Canberra. They have a few bureaucrats in Canberra deciding how many jobs we can have here in Queensland, how much coal can be exported. They want to control the amount of exports and wealth that's generated here in central and north Queensland from a room in Canberra. This is how far the Labor Party has departed from their original mission to defend and protect workers.
James.
Matt, here in New South Wales, we've got a problem with the state government here. The Premier is essentially refusing to intervene in the fight between her Environment Minister, Matt Keane, and John Barilaro, the local Deputy Premier and Nationals leader, over a plan to restrict diesel freight trains to save the planet. Now, is this sort of thing a threat to coalition unity on a state level or even a federal level when you have one side that's arguing for things for the bush and you've got a Liberal Party that seems to be in many cases captured by an urban moderate wing that oftentimes seems to be going lockstep with the Greens on many things?
Well, I don't know much about the particular issue, or contest there in New South Wales, but on the generic point you're making, look, I don't think it is at all, because when I talk to our supporters and members of both the Liberal and National parties, there is basically zero support for these crazy green left-wing policies. And it's a bit surprising, isn't it, that people who join and sign up and support a Liberal or National parties tend to not like crazy green left-wing agendas. It's a remarkable correlation, but there it is in the real world, and it's pretty much a scientific fact. So the way we need to progress is to get behind policies that grow our country, that keep our jobs here, that let us use our stuff. Like, why can't we use our coal to create electricity? We're exporting it to the rest of the world so they can create jobs. Why can't we use some here? All of these things are pragmatic, sensible policies that our supporters and Liberal National Party supporters would get behind every day of the week. The other point I'd make here is those some say, oh, let's sign up to the net zero 2050 emissions. Look, I agree with you. It's a bit crazy. It's a bit silly, but we need to settle this issue. We need to take it off the agenda. There's a word for that strategy. It's called appeasement. That's what it is.
Yes.
It is appeasement.
Indeed.
These so-called Liberal National Party supporters or members are trying to appease a radical green activist group and saying, we'll just sign up to this and then it'll all go away. We all know that's rubbish. The agenda behind this is to try and shut down the coal mining industry.
There's another word, Matt,
it's to take away our manufacturing sector, and that we should never appease those sort of radical views.
Exactly. There's another word which is called suicide. It's, as Alan Jones is fond of saying, economic suicide note.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to quickly ask you about the National Party's woes. There are divisions there, there are fractures there, it's undeniable. You are being utterly wasted currently. You are the future of the party and you do not have a ministry. What's going to happen next? Because if McCormack hasn't been effective thus far, there's not going to be a miracle that's going to suddenly make him a greater communicator and more visible and more effective in pushing National Party agendas. So what's going to happen next?
Well, Rita, I'm always focused on outcomes. So while I did think to get to further better outcomes, especially for people in the bush, Barnaby would have helped push that along. Michael's got an opportunity here. He's been re-elected leader. He's got my support as leader. That's the way the system works and has to work. And I just hope we can deliver, right? So what I want to see, in terms of what's next is we get on with the job of building dams in this country. We've got a lot of progress in the last 6 years. There's a lot now that are ready to go. Now's the test in the next year or two. We start actually pouring some concrete and getting them done and built, not just studied. Likewise, we build this Collinsville coal-fired power station. Let's get that on the move, and so we can create jobs here. Saving our aluminium industry, that's under grave threat at the moment, and that's thousands of regional jobs. We've got to protect that. So that's what's next for the National Party, and I'm throwing myself into that battle, and so I know as the rest of the team.
Matt Canavan, thanks so much for talking to us today on Outsiders. Good luck, and we look forward to seeing what's ahead for the Nationals and the Libs. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate. Have a good day.